All right, so we're diving deep today into something I think a lot of people probably have a picture in their mind of when they think of UFOs.
Yeah, the classic flying saucer image.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that didn't just come out of nowhere.
Right.
There's actually a very specific beginning to that story that really launched the whole modern UFO era in the U.S.
Right.
And we're talking post-World War II here.
A time of huge technological advancements and a lot of Cold War anxiety swirling around.
The perfect breeding ground for. We'll get to that. But the date to keep in mind is June 24th, 1947, near Mount Rainier, Washington.
Okay.
That's where a pilot named Kenneth Arnold had an experience that pretty much changed everything.
His sighting really is seen as the genesis of this whole thing, isn't it?
It is. It kicked off a wave of similar reports and really got people talking about what might be out there. And we've got some great historical analyses of this event to dig into today. So our mission is to understand what exactly happened that day.
And what its lasting impact has been. Because it's been huge.
Absolutely. So first off, who was Kenneth Arnold?
It's important to emphasize that this was not some guy prone to making up stories.
Yeah, he wasn't some wide-eyed kid.
Right.
We're talking about an experienced private pilot, over 4,000 flying hours under his belt, respected businessman from Boise, Idaho, even a member of the Idaho Search and Rescue Team.
It's a pretty credible guy.
Very much so. So on June 24th, he was on a business trip, but he'd also decided to make a little detour.
Oh, why was that?
Well, there was this $5,000 reward out for anyone who could find a downed Marine Corps plane near Mount Rainier.
Okay, so he's flying around looking for this plane.
Right. He's up at about 9,200 feet near Mineral, Washington, around 3:00 in the afternoon.
And what happens?
Well, that's when things start to get interesting. He sees these bright, flashing lights. At first, he thinks, oh, maybe it's just the sun glinting off another aircraft.
That makes sense.
But then about 30 seconds later, he sees the series of bright flashes off to his left, north of Mount Rainier.
What were they?
He sees 9 puny objects in what he describes as echelon formation.
Echelon formation, so like a staggered kind of line.
Yeah. Exactly. Almost a step-like arrangement that made him think there was some sort of order to it. And these things were spread out over about 5 miles.
Okay, that's a pretty big distance. So what did he do?
Well, he's trying to figure out what he's seeing, and the way these objects moved is really what makes this story so significant.
What did he say about their movement?
His description became super famous. He said they moved like a saucer if you skip it across water.
That's where the whole flying saucer thing came from.
Exactly. But it's so important to remember that he was specifically talking about the movement, the skipping motion,
Yeah.
not necessarily saying they actually looked like saucers.
Gotcha.
Although one of the objects was crescent-shaped, apparently. But yeah, he said they looked thin and flat at times and then would make these sudden flips and banks catching the light. But no visible tails or anything like that.
So definitely not like any plane he'd ever seen.
Nope. And then there's the speed, which he actually took the time to calculate.
And how did he do that?
He timed them traveling about 50 miles from Mount Rainier to Mount Adams, and it took them just 1 minute and 42 seconds.
Wow. So that means...
No, it works out to about 1,700 miles per hour.
Seriously. In 1947.
1947. There was literally nothing that could move that fast back then. He initially estimated they were smaller than a DC-4, but later on he actually revised that, thinking they are probably larger than 100 feet in diameter.
So he sees these things, makes these calculations, and then what? He must have told somebody?
Oh, yeah. He landed in Yakima and immediately told other pilots what he'd seen.
What do they think?
No one could really explain it. Then when he got to Pendleton, Oregon, he talked to a newspaper called the East Oregonian.
Okay.
And that's where reporters Nolan Skiff and Bill Biquette enter the picture.
And I'm guessing that's how this whole flying saucer thing really took off?
Bingo. Bill Biquette's article used the phrase, 9 bright saucer-like objects.
Oh, there it is.
Yep. The Associated Press picks up the story, and then just 2 days later, the Chicago Sun runs a headline with flying saucer in it.
Yeah.
And just like that, the story explodes.
It became a national sensation.
Huge. It turned Kenneth Arnold into a bit of a reluctant celebrity overnight.
I bet. I mean, that much attention would be overwhelming.
It really was. He was kind of embarrassed by all the misquotes and the frenzy it caused. Public reaction was wild, too. Some people had these religious interpretations.
Oh, wow. So how did the authorities react to all of this?
Well, with all this public interest and the potential for, well, who knows what the Air Force decided to get involved.
Makes sense. They couldn't just ignore it.
Right. And this kicked off a series of Air Force investigations. First, there was Operation Sign in 1948, then Project Grudge, and then the one everyone's heard of, Project Blue Book, starting in 1952.
So they were taking it pretty seriously.
Yeah, at first they were really worried it might be some super advanced Soviet technology.
That was a big fear back then, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
So what did they officially conclude about Kenneth Arnold's sighting?
Well, officially, they said it was a mirage.
A mirage.
I know. But they did say that they found both Arnold and an independent witness who saw something similar to be credible observers.
So they believed he saw something, they just didn't know what it was.
That seems to be the case. And that tendency to try and explain things away with conventional explanations became a real pattern with a lot of these investigations.
Interesting.
There were later evaluations, too, like the Robertson panel in '53 and the Condon Committee in the late '60s. And they generally agreed with the whole mirage idea. Eventually, Project Blue Book was terminated in 1969. Their final word was that no UFOs were a threat to national security, none showed any kind of unknown technology, and none were extraterrestrial.
Case closed.
Well, not quite, because there are still those who believe Arnold saw something truly extraordinary that day.
Yeah, and what do they point to as evidence?
Well, first off, that incredible speed,
Yeah.
that unusual flight pattern, those coordinated movements, and the fact that Arnold was a reliable witness with thousands of hours of flight experience. Plus, there were other people who reported seeing something similar around the same time, like a prospector on Mount Adams and a United Airlines crew.
Right, so the skeptics say mirage.
Yeah, that's a big one. They talk about temperature inversions distorting how things look in the distance.
Okay, so maybe he saw something, but it wasn't actually moving like that.
Right. There's even this researcher, Stuart Campbell, who did some calculations and suggested Arnold might have misidentified stationary objects because of atmospheric conditions. Other theories out there say maybe it was meteors or unusual clouds or even reflections or water spots on his plane's windows.
Wow, so lots of possibilities.
Yeah.
But no definitive answers.
Exactly. And that's part of what makes this whole subject so fascinating. But one thing's for sure. Whether it was a mirage or something else entirely, Kenneth Arnold's sighting had a huge impact.
It really kicked off the modern UFO era.
Absolutely. That term flying saucer that the media latched onto completely shaped the way we picture UFOs. And his report triggered a wave of similar sightings all over the world.
And gave birth to the whole field of ufology.
And it wasn't just real life either. Flying saucers became a huge thing in science fiction movies, books, comics, you name it.
That one sighting really captured the imagination.
It really did. So Kenneth Arnold's experience might be a bit of a mystery, but it's definitely a landmark event. It sparked our modern fascination with UFOs and got us all looking up at the sky, wondering what else might be out there.
And I think it leaves us with a lot to think about. Like how much our perceptions are shaped by the stories we hear and the words we use.
That's a great point. Because think about it. One guy sees something unusual, another guy writes about it using a catchy phrase, and bam! Suddenly everyone's seeing flying saucers.
It makes you wonder what other stories we tell ourselves about the unknown and how much those stories shape what we think we know.
It really does make you think.